is changing so rapidly. And I'd just like to hear from you what you think, where are you in the implementation journey, and what are the critical priorities of your next phase?
Well, thank you very much. And again, let me thank my senior brother, His Excellency, the Governor, for inviting me. And it's been a very, very intense day and a half. We started this journey, as you know, in 2020. That is when the Assembly of Heads of States and Government decided that we have to accelerate market integration in Africa. 55 economies, fragmented, 42 currencies, inability of people to move easily across borders, all of these things contributing to a very, very constrained intra-Africa growth pattern. And since then, we have, I'm happy to report, as I said yesterday, there are now 50 countries in Africa that are implementing the AfCFTA. We have had, we've concluded all of the protocols, what we refer to as the protocols, which are really the sub-agreements for that constitute the main trade agreement. That work has been concluded, and we are seeing records amounts of intra-Africa trade. This year, we project intra-Africa trade will be at $230 billion. Last year, it was at $220 billion. So we are making progress. But we have to move faster because, as you said, the global economy and the global context is adverse. Many countries have been kicked out of AGOA. Many African countries have lost market share in the US market through AGOA. Many African countries are not able to access the European Union markets. So we have to build a domestic market as the African continent, and it's here in Africa. And the crisis that you are mentioning, actually from the very beginning of this journey, we have been, as Africans here, we have been subjected to externalities that have had a very adverse impact on intra-Africa trade because of our dependence on external markets. The COVID-19 pandemic, for example, fragmenting supply chains, as we all know, and we were at the back of the queue for vaccines, germ-killing products, and other therapeutics. The Russia-Ukraine context, which also caused inflationary pressures on many, many African countries and pushing millions of people back into poverty because of the over-reliance on the imports of grains from Russia, Ukraine. Now the war in Iran, similarly, inflationary pressures. So for us to be able to navigate any crisis or future crisis, we've got to build a domestic market. And by domestic market, I mean the 50 countries that have ratified the agreement establishing the AfCFTA.
Yes, and I think you've outlined all the external factors that you've had no control over that have really had an adverse impact. But in terms of what you can control, where are the bottlenecks? And domestically, is it visa-free access? Is it the cost of airline travel, for example, or air routes or freight routes and the administrative burden of freight crossing borders? Where do you see the domestic bottlenecks that can be unlocked quickly with willing?
And that is really a critical challenge, is overcoming the constraints. You've mentioned some of them. The cost of trade finance continues to be very high. So small, medium enterprises cannot afford trade finance that would enable them to scale and to expand and reach new markets out of ECOWAS into the East African community, for example. So we have to work with our development finance institutions to see what mitigation steps can be taken so that our commercial banks can enable affordable onward lending. The second constraint is infrastructure, transport, logistics. The infrastructure, transport and logistics continues to be very, very high. Intra-Africa travel is very, very expensive relative to other parts of the world. And so we have to work within the African Union and with individual governments to find ways of reducing the cost of travel. And by the way, the cost is attributable mainly to each country wanting to impose taxes on the cost per seat. So it's a government policy issue that we have to address. Even the movement of cargo is very, very difficult. From Lagos to Abidjan is 1,080 kilometers, but it can take goods up to 17 days to reach Abidjan, a distance of 1,080 kilometers with 37 checkpoints along the way. So we've got constraints that we can deal with relatively quickly. Then you mentioned a free movement of persons. This is a very, very important area, because if business people and the business people in the room here are not able to move relatively easy around the continent for the purposes of business, then we will be constraining intra-Africa trade. We know the experience of the European Union when the European Union relaxed movement of persons. I'm not even talking about movement of labor. I'm just talking about temporary movement of persons for business meetings. We saw the exponential growth in intra-EU trade. So we have to accelerate intra-Africa movement of persons. And in this regard, Nigeria, Benin, Ghana, recently Togo, Rwanda, Kenya are some of the countries, and Congo-Brazzaville are some of the countries that have announced visa-free for all Africans on arrival. And that's exactly the direction that we have to move in and accelerate movement of persons. And let me, whilst we are talking about movement of persons, let me also address something which is very, very important. And that is that when business people are moving, a business person is not looking to stay in country X indefinitely. They are looking to conduct business and then leave. So we are working with our leaders, our heads of states at the highest level to address this issue. We're also working with the private sector to address this issue, to make sure that as many countries as possible, at the very least, enable visa on arrival. So these are some of the constraints. The point you make is absolutely correct. They are all within our reach as a continent.
Yes, and I was recently in